Thank you so much for joining us today for Ask Our Experts, identity theft and what to do if it happens to you. Today, we will be talking to Charles, and I want to introduce him to you really quickly here. Charles, thank you so much for being with me. You are the Risk and Compliance Manager as well as the Compliance Officer with Copper State Credit Union, and you've got a ton of certifications. I will probably, fumble my way through them. I apologize, but you are a credit union compliance expert, CUCE, as well as a National Certified Compliance Officer and a Bank Secrecy Act compliance specialist. So lots of experience. And Charles, you've seen so much over your time in the financial industry. So, I'm really glad that you were able to join me today. Charles has been with the credit union for about 2 years now and has financial industry experience coming up on 25 years. So that is very significant. He is certainly the person I want to be talking to about getting financial advice, especially with such a serious topic as identity theft. But just some fun things about Charles as well. You are a big sports fan, specifically enjoys live sporting events. I have to ask you, Charles, are you excited to get back to going to live sports? I know slowly but surely they're coming back.
I am ecstatic. Can't wait to get out to Cardinal Stadium and root on our Cardinals as well. So I'm pretty excited. And go Suns. Suns are in the playoffs, so we're keeping a close eye on them as well.
Yeah, awesome. And you were a coach for 20 years. You were a football coach, right?
Yes, I coached youth football for approximately 20 years. Really enjoyed it. Loved giving back to the community and just spending time with the youth in our community. So yeah, one of the most enjoyable times of my life. I really enjoyed it.
That's so great. And really, it kind of goes along with what you do now, because you mentioned to me that your favorite part of your job as risk and compliance manager is protecting the credit union and protecting our members. And, what better goal could you have than really focusing on that? So I really appreciate you and what you do for the credit union. And now is the time where I start picking your brain. I want to just start with a really basic definition for those of us who are listening, and we hear in the news, we hear about identity theft, but it's tricky to understand exactly what it is. So can you just tell us, real short and simple, what is identity theft?
Absolutely, Christina. And also thank you for that wonderful introduction. And it's a pleasure to be here. This is such an important topic, and I'm just glad to be a part of it. So again, thank you very much. Identity theft is when someone steals your personal information and uses it without your permission. And there are several different types of identity theft, and they can all affect a person differently.
So there's several different types. Can you give me a few examples? What are the different types of identity theft? What have you seen in the industry?
They can include account takeover, usually done with individuals' online accounts, their debit cards or their credit cards.
Okay.
Driver's license theft, mail theft, online shopping, social security number theft, senior or child identification thefts, medical identity theft, and also criminal theft. And I'd say that those are probably the most common forms of identity theft that we're seeing in these times.
Wow, that's quite a bit.
Yes.
I have a lot to be watching out for, I guess, is what you're trying to tell me.
It's forever evolving.
So what are some examples, within those? What have you had experience with? I know you mentioned tax fraud can be particularly devastating. Do you have an example of that you want to share with everybody?
Yeah, especially with it being tax filing season. It's maybe past just a little, but it's still a hot issue right now. Let's set up a scenario. Let's say Jane gets her social security number purchased on the dark web for just a few dollars. The perpetrator then visits irs.gov, their website, verifies that she has not filed her recent tax return, and then files a tax return pretending to be Jane. Then a month later, Jane files her taxes, anticipating a return, only to find out that her taxes have already been filed and her refund has already been dispersed.
Ugh.
Yeah, terrible scenario, right? You know, it's important to note that the more information the perpetrator has, the more success they have at succeeding. So there's a good possibility that the perpetrator had more than just Jane's social security number.
Right.
Likely they had her date of birth as well as her place of employment and maybe even her residential information.
Well, yeah, it seems like, you know, once you get one piece of information, it's easier for them to get more and more because they use that first piece to get more, and then they're able to do even more damage, right?
That is correct. Absolutely. Good point.
You know, what would be funny is if Jane actually owed money and then the perpetrator wouldn't get anything out of that. Sorry, Jane.
You know what's important to also note, Christina, because of today's technology and the internet, and our personal information is more at risk than ever before.
Yeah.
Can become available to criminals in a variety of ways, as they're constantly looking for consumers who are not familiar with what to look out for, and others who may have just simply let their guards down. So we need to always stay vigilant.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, so how does ID theft happen? Like, I know that, you know, that certain things can happen online, but give me a few examples of how criminals are getting their hands on our personal information.
You know, there's a number of ways. It could be due to physical theft, for example, stealing our credit cards or our mail, or placing skimmers into the gas pumps, card readers,
yeah,
stealing our wallets or checkbooks, or even our mail. They get solicitations in the mail and then fill out the information and then send it back. Other forms where they actually steal our information is by, for example, we open up an email. We have to be very careful with the attachments in our emails.
Oh, yes.
And we should also be careful when we access our emails through our phones. There are a lot of different phishing technologies that once you open that, it gives them access to all of our personal information on our computers, which includes our phones as well.
And Charles, I actually got one of those. I got a phishing attempt on my phone. It was the first one I ever got via text message. So what they did was they texted me a link, and they wanted me to click the link and go in and give my personal information, you know, for some, you know, reward or I don't even know what it was, but that was the first time I'd gotten it by text. So like email, don't click on links in emails if you don't know who it's from and you can't verify that. Tell me about data breaches. Does that have anything to do with identity theft?
Absolutely. Let's say, for example, you accessed an online website and you made numerous purchases with that particular company. And then someone actually breaches the security of that particular company. At that point, your information could be exposed and then sold, or someone could actually pretend to be you and do a lot of damage to your credit history.
And something like that, I have no control over, right? Because that was just the company, wherever I had bought stuff from, that was their security issue. So that's kind of scary to know that a lot of this is out of our control. So I want to move us along because there's just so much for us to talk about today. So I want to ask you next, what does a perpetrator, a criminal, you know, whatever we want to call it, what are they doing with that personal information once they have it? What is a typical scenario?
Well, there's a number of scenarios, but typically they pretend to be you. They apply for things. They receive those items or that merchandise under your name with no intentions to pay for it. Or they'll go out and apply for personal loans, get the cash, never pay it back. So there's usually some monetary benefit to them stealing your information.
Yeah, and you end up having to deal with the consequences.
Correct. Correct.
So, you know, if I find a strange transaction on my credit card, let's say, and that wasn't me, does that mean that my identity has been stolen? I know that can be kind of confusing.
You know, there's always that possibility, Christina, and that's a very good point. So once you've determined that the transactions are unauthorized, you should immediately begin searching for other suspicious activity on all of your accounts. Then take the necessary precautions to protect yourself.
So I shouldn't just assume, oh, it was a one-time deal, I'll just close that credit card. I should actually go through all of the steps to make sure that I'm protected.
Absolutely. And some of those steps would include monitoring your credit report.
Yeah.
Keeping an eye on your credit score. Watch all your bank accounts and credit cards carefully and possibly set up fraud alerts. Change your passwords. In fact, you should change your passwords often and use very, very strong passwords and not recycle passwords.
And don't repeat them, right? I was
exactly.
Because if you repeat a password and you use it on, let's say, 5 different sites, the least secure site, if that one gets hacked or breached, then all of those sites are compromised, right? Exactly. So that's why we can't repeat them.
Exactly. You are exactly right. And if someone that's attempting fraudulent activity on you gets a hold of one password, they will go to all of your other accounts to see if that password is successful in accessing any other website. So very good point. A couple other things we should probably pay attention to, Christine, is, again, going back to the emailed attachments, always be wary of the attachments on emails. And equally as important, limit the sharing of your information. You need to be very careful. When in doubt, do not share your information, because once it's out there, it can create a lot of problems for you. And also, don't leave a paper trail. Never leave the ATM receipt, credit card, or gas receipt in that location. Always retrieve it. Make sure you destroy it.
That makes sense. One of the fraud schemes that was brought to my attention recently, and we just posted an article about it, it's on our website, it's called card cracking. But basically, someone who has a bank account, a credit union account, and they have a debit card, someone will solicit them over social media or text and say, hey, I can make you an easy $3,000 or whatever the amount is. And then what happens is, if that person hands out their information, their bank account information, the fraudster will try to deposit fake checks into the account and then take the cash out of the ATM. Makes a whole big mess, and it's illegal, right, to be a party to that. So that's a really big one, especially targeting college students and senior citizens. It's a big scam right now. I just wanted to mention that because it was fresh in my mind.
It's a very good point. As I mentioned at the beginning of the broadcast here, it's forever evolving. You know, it's a constant battle. Criminals come up with new and inventive ideas all the time. So the one thing that we can consistently do is just remain vigilant and be careful who we share our information with.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think what we really want to talk about now is what to do if identity fraud or identity theft happens to you. And you've got some great points that I know you want to share, but I want to let our audience know that we actually have a downloadable checklist that you can take with you. So hopefully one of my colleagues has been able to post the link to an ID theft checklist, and it's the Fearless Path to Restoring Your Identity Right Now. That's what it's called. And it basically walks you through all of the steps that you will need in order to take care of it if that situation were to happen to you, which if it has, I'm so sorry. It is really unfortunate, so disturbing to have your identity stolen, but we want to have this resource for you. It's totally free. You can just view it on our website, or you can actually put in your name and email and get it sent to you as a PDF. PDF. So both of those are options, and that link should be in the comments for this event. So at any time, if you want that checklist, you can just click on the link and go and download that. But let's talk about it, because I really want to hear from you, Charles, and your perspective on things to do. So like, identity theft has happened. What do I do? And what do I need to do right away to really protect myself?
Yes. Well, if you've already been compromised, some of the things that you can do immediately is call all the affected banks, companies where you know the fraud occurred, get a credit report, see if there's anything that looks unusual on there, possibly place a fraud alert on your credit, report the identity theft to the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, and also maybe contact your local police department. Those are the steps that I would take if I immediately, upon recognizing or suspecting that maybe my information has been compromised. As I mentioned earlier, Christina, fraudulent schemes continue to evolve. And unfortunately, we can take all the necessary precautions and still fall prey to identity theft. However, by taking the necessary precautions and can greatly reduce our chances of being a victim of identity theft, or simply minimize the damages. And some of the steps that we should begin to practice is never give out your personal information over the phone.
Yeah.
Verify the legitimacy of online businesses before making any purchases. Being extremely careful when sharing your private information and asking how your information is being protected and why they're actually requiring this information. Legitimate businesses will respond to that. They'll appreciate you asking those questions.
Good to know.
Again, destroying your private records and other solicitation that you may have received in the mail. This is very important as well, because so many people have cell phones now. Protecting your mobile devices so it's very difficult for anyone to access, and using apps rather than the mobile browser on your phone.
Why is that?
Well, because the mobile app is verified at a verified avenue directly to that particular institution.
Okay.
The browser, you could inadvertently put in the wrong address there, and then you access a website that's similar to the institution that you're attempting to contact. So that small little error there can send you to a fraudulent site, and they can actually capture your information. Okay. And last but not least, just simply never letting your guard down and remaining vigilant.
Yeah, and that's a lot of information. That's so good to know, especially because it's not like we can sit here and tell people, oh, don't worry, there's only 3 scams going on, and if you just know about these 3 scams, you'll be protected forever. Unfortunately, that's not the case. Because you said it's always evolving, that means that all we can do is have that protective stance and be taking a look at the protections that we have in place, strong passwords, password managers. And again, this is so much to just go over verbally with people. I want to really encourage you to visit our website and download the checklist. It's got everything on here that Charles was so kind to help me with, and really make sure that we didn't miss anything. And it's got a nice checklist format so that if this does happen to you, or if it's happened to somebody you can use it, you can print it out and give them a copy as well. We are happy to provide that resource. Well, Charles, thank you so much. I know that you are very busy. You have a very important job here at the credit union as compliance and risk manager. So the fact that you took your time out of your day to hang out here with me on Facebook Live, it just means so much to our members, and we really appreciate you and all you do to protect the credit union and protect our members. So have a wonderful day, everyone out there, and we'll see you next time.
Goodbye, everyone. Thanks for having me. Thanks, Christine.